Hello and welcome to another YouTube video of mine. Today is a talk on memorizing the Quran. A lot of people have mixed opinions whether this is right or whether it is wrong. Now, before I explain to you this question, whether it's right or wrong, I will just give you two examples and then I will answer this question. A non-Muslim 15-year-old asked a Muslim, I don't understand why there are, in Islam, 5 times prayer, when in other religion, whether it's Christians or Hindus, there's no timing for prayer. You don't actually, if for example you miss your parents, there's no timing for that. What's the logic that you have to remember God at specific times? The Muslim said that imagine if you had 2 friends. One friend came to you whenever he or she needed you. And the other friend was a regular visitor who used to come to you every now and then. One day, one of the 2 friends were in need. Actually, both of them were in need at the same time. Let's suppose both of them were in need at the same time. Who would you help? And you had only an ability to help one person, one friend. Who would you help? The one who keeps on visiting you, who you are more familiar with? Or would you help that friend who only comes whenever they want to, whenever it's their need? Who would you help? Of course, you would first help the one who you're more familiar with. And that's first example. I'll give you another example. Suppose if I said to you that in your room, in your living room, let's say lobby, in your living room, or some people call it lobby, there are orange cushions. And you know for sure that there's no such thing as orange cushions in your living room, right? You say to me instantly that, excuse me, I think you saw the wrong room, or you went to this wrong house, and it's not my house, for sure. But then if, for example, I said to you that there are orange-colored cushions in my living room, in my lobby, then you would say, well, there might be, I am not familiar with your living room. Focus on the word might be, maybe, right? When someone is not familiar with you or your living room or any information about you, you can give that person any information because they would say, maybe this could, then there are possibilities in the heart that the person can say, well, maybe that could be true and maybe that can be true. That's the concept of studying the Quran, to be familiar with your own religion. So you can be familiar so much that if someone says something about you, you have to be at least familiar enough to know that someone is saying the truth about you or someone in your family. You need to be at least that familiar. And you should be at least that familiar that you should be able to give a clarification that no, it's not this, it is actually this. Nabeel Qureshi is a perfect example. Nabeel Qureshi was following Islamic ways, and during that period, and he was following Islamic ways during the time of the 9/11, and he didn't know anything about it. He was not familiar with the Holy Quran at that time. So, when the 9/11 happened, then the non-Muslims said, this is in your book and that is in your book. Instead, during that, a few months later after that event, he met David Wood. And David Wood and Nabeel Qureshi became friends. And before he could become familiar with his own book, he became familiar with the Bible. That is why books such as Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus actually come to existence. Because before you become familiar with your own self, you become familiar with someone else. So it's like before becoming familiar with your own home, you become familiar with someone else's house. So that's one of the motives. Now, people like Christian Prince are another example. Now, Christian Prince is an Islamic critic. He does not know anything about the Bible. He has absolutely no knowledge of the Bible. In fact, he criticizes those verses of the Holy Quran, which are same or similar to the Bible. He speaks about Moses and other prophets, whom are exactly those prophets which are mentioned in the Bible. He doesn't even realize that. He just goes into the logic of criticizing. Okay? Now, I don't say that Christian Prince is the nightmare of the Muslim world. I call him a punishment to those Muslims who are not familiar with their religion. He's a punishment to them. So he is a humiliating punishment to those Muslims who don't know the Holy Quran, and they just go on to debate him if that is true. For example, I have a doubt that they are even Muslims. I have a doubt that you don't know who that person is. I mean, Christian Prince was in a Skype communication with Sam, and he immediately showed his image that he's communicating with Sam, but he never, Christian Prince, I have a doubt whether he's actually speaking to Muslims even. And the second level is that he's either speaking to non-Muslims or he's speaking to weak Muslims. But whatever it is, but people like Christian Prince could be a humiliating punishment to those Muslims who do not know, who are not familiar with the Quran. Now, being familiar is the first level. The first level is to become familiar with your religion, to be familiar. Now, suppose in a situation you do not know the Arabic language and you go off to memorize it. That is, you are choosing. The first level is to be familiar, and the second level is to memorize it. Some people who are Muslims, non-Arab Muslims, they go off to memorize the Quran, which is the second stage, before passing off the first stage, of becoming familiar. So one of the things, there is no point in memorizing the Quran and not being familiar with what's actually written in the religious holy book. So in this situation, in this scenario, it is wise and suitable that they actually read the translation and to become familiar with what's actually written in the holy book. They should be familiar with they should pass the non-Arab Muslims who go off to memorize the Quran. They should first go on to the stage of reading the Quran in their own language and being familiar with the text. Then they should think about memorizing it. Those parents that send their children off to memorizing the Quran without going down to the basics are not dealing with Islam in a logical manner. It is their fault, but not the fault of the book, the holy book. Now, the art of memorizing the Quran should, once you have understood the Quran and you are familiar with what's there, then you can go on at your own ease, at your own comfort, when you find suitable. Then you should, at a comfortable stage in your life, when you're more comfortable in life, you then can choose on to memorizing it. And it is good that you memorize it, because then you can actually reason it with people like Christian Prince. If, for example, Christian Prince brings up a verse of the Quran, you can actually bring another verse and you would know exactly where to locate the other verse. Some people who are only familiar would know somewhere that this is written there. But those who memorize it would know exactly which surah is mentioned and where this verse is and in which surah this verse is. Those who have memorized the Quran would know which verse is mentioned in which surah. So that is the advantage. You can actually defend yourself and absolutely locate and immediately, without thinking much, show a verse that this is mentioned in the Quran and this is what it means. You cannot be fooled. People like Christian Prince take advantage of your lack of knowledge. Just notice a grammatical error or difference can completely change a sentence, such as for and to can actually completely change a sentence, the meaning behind a sentence. Like you saw in a debate between Muhammad Hijab and David Wood, the difference between for and to just completely changed the meaning of complete context. So that is just sometimes just for example, if I show you the first paragraph, and I'm sure you're seeing this first paragraph on your screen right now. If I show you, please kindly read the first paragraph and then read the second paragraph, you would notice that if I just showed you the first paragraph, you would go against Islam. But then if you see the second paragraph of this particular verse, hadith, that you would notice that it changes the complete scenario. So that is the logic. Now I'm going to show you an image of a man who's looking this. I'm now going to show you, you're probably already seeing it, an image of a man. Now in this image, the person can be looking straight at you, or the person can be looking to the side. Only if you know the truth behind that picture would you be able to locate, you will be able to know. Secondly, if, for example, I draw a square on a piece of paper and I just show you the corner, just the corner, you would think that I have drawn a triangle. But if I zoom out and I show you at a distance, then you would know that this is the drawing is that of a square but not a triangle. So this is what I mean by knowing the full picture, by knowing the full truth. So this is my concept and my logic behind knowing the Quran, familiarizing it, and then memorizing it only at the advanced stage. The basic level is to familiarize yourself so that people do not fool you around, and some people do not, like the critics of Islam, do not take advantage of your lack of knowledge. That is the purpose of becoming a true Muslim, to familiarize on the first level and to memorize if you can. That's the second stage. I hope I have explained myself enough. Thank you for listening. Take care and goodbye.